Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Draft Prospects show here presented by the Hockey Writers. My name is Greg Boysen. I'm your ringleader / discussion host. Today, we're joined by our three draft prospect gurus over at the Hockey Writers. Our man of the hour today, Peter Baracchini. How you doing?
Not too bad, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We also have Matthew Zator and Andrew Forbes. They get to kind of be the job of the roasters today as we pick apart Peter's latest set of rankings. But be careful, boys, because the tables will be turned on you soon enough. And I don't think Peter will forget. Plus, this is being recorded, so we could always go back and take notes. So
I have a good memory.
Let the ribbings be fair and just, but keep them in line. All right, so Peter, you just released your newest set of rankings. I believe it's 60 to your top 64. Is that right?
No, top 100.
Right. Top 100.
Top 100 for March, yes.
Top 100 players heading as we get closer to the draft, which is coming up in July. We're still on target for that. Hopefully that stays. So real quick, why don't you just give us a little bit your top five, who you got for your top 100 in March?
Yeah, actually, top five is actually changed from my top 64. Really, I had three defensemen, but right now it's Matthew Beniers from the University of Michigan at 1, Fabian Lizelle from Luleå at number 2, William Eklund from Djurgårdens at 3, Owen Power from Michigan at 4, and Luke Hughes from the USA U18 National Team Development Program at number 5.
Righty. Do you think with Michigan unfortunately having the bow out of the NCAA tournament, do you think that's going to affect a Matty Beniers or Power, any of those top guys? Or do you think it's just, they're kind of locked in where they're locked in? Guys know who they are at this point.
It's always a concern, especially when they had high hopes of being one of the top teams, especially with the roster that they had. And I didn't mention Kent Johnson, but I will get to him momentarily at one point during this video. Those two, Beniers and Power, I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure that they're probably locked in at top fives at least. It could be up and down. Beniers could be one. He could fall down as well. A lot of the rankings out there, it's going to be very sporadic and very different. But with the way that he plays on both sides of the puck, it's just really phenomenal, his smarts. And I think that's what separates him from, some of the other prospects, especially the other forwards that I have at 2 and 3, where he can be reliable at both ends very well.
Okay, Matthew, what do you think of those top five? Is that I don't want you to give away too much of your rankings that are going to be coming out here in a couple of weeks, but how do you rank his top five?
I mean, that top five is pretty solid. You got like Owen Power. I would maybe drop him out of the top five at this point. There's a few other players that are kind of can go into that, but I mean, those five, Lysell and Eklund, what they're doing in Sweden is ridiculous, and they're going to be top 5 talents in the NHL eventually. And Beniers, what can you say about him? Even though the University of Michigan did bow out early, what he did this season in the NCAA and in the World Juniors is, I think it speaks for itself. I think he's pretty locked in that top 5. I don't really have any. I'm not going to roast any of those picks. I mean, that's ridiculous. So that 5 is pretty solid.
All right, Andrew, what's your take on those top 5? Pretty close to what you're going to be coming out with here in a couple of weeks for your next rankings.
Yeah, I think it'll be in the same range. Like Matt, I think Owen Power might just drop right outside that top 5. He'll still be a top 10 in my books, but yeah, I think for the most part, you see a lot of the scouts right now have seen what they want to see. So Matty Beniers, I think you're talking about a top 3 guy no matter what. In Lysell and Eklund, I mean, they're getting a lot of love for potentially being a first overall pick as well. So there's a little bit of an interchange there in the top 3, but yeah, I mean, a solid top 5 for Peter for sure.
All righty. Well, you teased us a little bit, Peter, with Kent Johnson there. So I got a feeling his name is gonna come up here shortly.
Yeah.
Who rounds out your top 10 of your most recent rankings?
Yeah, very, very shortly. Rounding out, it's going to be Brant Clark from Barry Colts, but on loan to HC Novi Zemki from Slovakia. Dylan Genther at 7 from the Edmonton Oil Kings. Simon Evanson from Frölunda, J20 at number 8. Jesper Wallstedt, goaltender from Luleå, very high this year. And number 10, Ken Johnson, University of Michigan.
All righty. And then you guys can, Matt and Peter, or Andrew, you can tack on to this question too. How much this has just been such a goofy year for scouting in general. I know when the season shut down last year, it was kind of like, well, we know everything that we know about these guys at this point. This year, it's been a lot of video scouting. You don't, and I spent 2 seasons scouting in the North American Hockey League. I didn't get to do it this year because there were no games played in Illinois. So unfortunately I couldn't do it, but there is a lot to say about seeing a kid in person as opposed to watching him on video. Do you think that is changing the rankings at all or affecting them? Or is it just, these kids at the top 10 level, even first round are so good. It's just where they slot in, whether or not necessarily that they don't deserve to be there.
Peter, if you don't mind me taking this question, I'm
right
going to jump on it. I think when you're talking top 10, you're maybe not as affected with just the video scouting, but it's when you start to get outside that top 10. I mean, top 10, you have a pretty good idea of where they're ranking, from when these kids are like 15, 16, you're seeing what they're able to do. But when you start to get into like lower first round, second round, third round, that's when you're seeing a little bit where, you don't get to see all the intangibles that these guys bring, the maturity to their game, how they play in the defensive end, unless you ISO cam these guys and have that ability to do so. You don't see the same kind of game that, you'd see from the top 10 guys where what you're getting for the most part. That said, I mean, we saw it last year with Chinikov. I mean, teams will go off the board no matter what. So at the end of the day, I think, there's going to be a surprise in the top, I want to say the top 20 picks. And I we'll probably be back here talking about it after the July draft.
Yeah, for sure. There's always one team that makes you go, what? Okay. But that Blue Jackets pick was one for the ages. That's for sure. Matthew, what do you think of his top 10 and how, the difficulties in scouting this year, how that's affecting, or if it's not affecting our overall rankings?
The scouting, the lack of viewings in person it definitely affects the rankings. And like you said, it's different when you're watching on video, when you're watching at an arena and being able to watch a specific guy all game rather than, you're at the mercy of the broadcast, and it's really hard to focus in on one guy. And, props to the guys that do this video scouting full time. Being able to do that is a skill in itself. So, but yeah, it's going to be a different year. I was saying, in the intro to the rankings, I was saying about, it's hard to pick guys, and there's going to be a lot of steals. I think there's going to be a lot of guys that'll drop off that usually wouldn't, and, get picked in the second, third round when they should have been picked in the first. So I think more so this year than ever, you're going to see guys like that, make it to the NHL. And, why were they drafted in the 4th round? Well, because of this year. So yeah, and that's just going to be the reality of scouting. I think maybe even at the beginning of next year, as COVID kind of goes away, even if it doesn't go away in certain places. As for the rest of the top 10, I don't like the Matthew Coronado's not in there, but that's the biggest one. But I mean, that top 10 is pretty solid in my books, and it's not very interesting agreeing with you, but other than Coronado's not in there, I mean, a lot of people saying about his skating is maybe holding him back on him being higher, but I can't say enough about Coronado's game, and he's one of my favorites for sure. Yeah,
I'm a big fan of his, and I'm actually excited because they just announced here in Illinois that the Chicago Steel could have limited capacity for the remainder of their season. It's only like 600 people, but I'm hoping to maybe get out there and catch that team in person. They got, I mean, besides Cornell, they've got a ton of great young talent on that team there. They really, Ryan Hardy, their GM, I don't know how he's not in the NHL or AHL at some capacity yet. He will be. There's no doubt. He's a good one.
Yeah. And it's just a testament to like how well the USHL is developing as like a premier league in terms of prospects right now. There's so many USHL players that have like made the jump from Canada to come over here. I know Ayrton Martino is one player that's caught in a lot of eye with the scouting community. And as you mentioned with the Steel, there's Ryan Ufko, there's Jack Barr, there's Matthew Samaskovich. There's so many great talent on that roster that it's just oozing talent for the next few years right now.
Absolutely. And I think, we talk about the effects of COVID's had on this year. I don't think any league has had, I don't want to say COVID having a positive effect because, that just sounds weird. But if there's any league in the entire planet that's taken advantage of the situation more, it's the USHL as a whole, because they've had a lot of players that otherwise wouldn't have been playing there this year. And hopefully they build on that because it is a really good league. And they've had a lot of success the last couple of years, not just the Chicago program, but there's a lot of really good programs that are pumping out NHL products. So hopefully, gives players another option, as opposed to, I think Definitely. For a long time, people were thinking USHL, I can go be a big fish in a small pond, or I can go play on the third or fourth line in the CHL and get more eyes on me. But now that's kind of changed a little bit. There's definitely more eyes on the USHL. Speaking of eyes, if you have your eyes on this, either on our Hockey Writers Facebook page or our YouTube channel, please make sure you hit the like button or subscribe before you head on out. Therefore, you'll stay updated when we're going to have another one of our fun draft ranking shows, as well as all of our other, I think we have like 362 daily shows now. We have, and everybody's got a show at the Hockey Writers right now. So, just hit subscribe and like. Well, you'll find something you enjoy, I promise you. So let's move along. We've got our top 10. So this is your second ranking, Peter, you've released this year. So who has made the biggest jump from your first set out in February to your March rankings? Who's climbing the boards?
I would say one of them is definitely Simon Robertson from Skellefteå. He was ranked 25th on my top 75, and he jumped up to 14th in my latest ranking. So a very big jump for him, and he is just, I mean, aside from William Eklund and Fabian Lysell, he is the next best forward coming out of Sweden, and he's just got such a really good work ethic. He's got really good strength, and he's got a very powerful shot. I mean, his release and his accuracy is probably one of the top fives in this draft. And there are so many great shooters right now, but Robertson, because of his awareness, because of his shot and his power, it's something that, you just can't ignore. And he jumped up into my top 15.
All right, Matthew, Andrew, any comments on that move, or is there a guy you're watching shoot up the boards?
Well, I mean, yeah, Simon Robertson's a big riser, and he's been pretty impressive. Logan Stankoven is another guy. He hasn't played. He's played now a couple games in the WHL this season, but before then he hasn't played. But looks like he's gotten stronger just from, speaking with a few scouts over at Dauber there. And he's gotten stronger apparently. And that's a big thing for him. He's had some pretty impressive seasons in the WHL already. So definitely keep an eye on him going forward as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Robertson, for you to have him jump up like that, I think it's a good move. I don't think early on he was getting enough respect, and just watching some video on him recently, just his skating and his shot, I think, are more underrated than people give him credit for. So for him to be a top 15 pick, there is potential there. I could still see him sliding to later in the first round. And if he does, I think it's going to be a solid pickup for whichever team is able to grab him at that point.
Well, in order for somebody to rise, somebody's got to drop. That's just mathematics for you. So who is on the flip side, who's the guy that's starting to not be as favorable as he was a month ago?
There's really one I'd like to focus in on, but I want to say Carson Lambos is one that also fell to the teens as well for me. I had him in my top 3. He started off strong, and which is why I still had him in the top 3 previously, where I thought that maybe he could try and get to the point where maybe he could find that consistency that he did early on in the season, but he just really hasn't found it, and his play started to dip, and now it's been reported that he's dealing with an injury right now, so that's really going to hurt his draft stock in the future. But my main faller is Zachary Leroux from the Halifax Mooseheads, and it's not really a knock against his overall play. It's just some of his decision makings, because he got suspended a few times this season on, a couple careless plays and everything like that. He has great energy. I love that. I love that when looking at a player, and hopefully they can maintain that. But there are times where he does cross the line, and I think maybe he just needs to settle down a little bit. And I know I talked about this on the last episode that we had, that he would probably fall, and he did for me. So that's my main faller right there.
All righty. Andrew, what do you think about those guys, and who's a guy that's not looking as good as he was earlier this year for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the injury to Lambos is going to be a huge blow. I think, obviously you can't dictate how a player was going to, drop really based on his play. It was limited play this year. I think people knew what they were getting with Lambos prior to the injury, but I do think the injury is going to hurt. And he won't drop severely, but it's going to be significant enough that, again, he's going to be a late first round steal to somebody if he can stay healthy and get back to where he was. As for Leroux, I couldn't agree more with Peter. I think the decision-making is the biggest thing, and teams are so tentative to take players right now that, don't play smart. There's a line, and unfortunately there are players that still, like to teeter that line every once in a while. And Leroux seems like one of those guys. But, at the end of the day, if he can put the talent together, I mean, you're potentially talking about a guy who doesn't mind being a Tom Wilson type figure and being able to teeter that line, but still have that offensive threat. So obviously we all know what Washington and their fans think of Tom Wilson, and every team would love to have a guy like that. But, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up in the draft.
Yeah, it's definitely a fine line. 10, 15, 20 years ago, every team had at least 2 or 3 of those guys, just because now if you're going to be that type of, borderline or flat out, I'll say a dirty player, you better be able to score at least 25 goals to cancel out all those games, and you're going to be missing all that time you're spending in the penalty box. So,
and that's the thing with Leroux. He's got a lot of great offensive, like a really great offensive tool set. He's got the speed, he's got the hands, he's got the drive. It's just the aggressiveness just needs to be toned down a bit. And I get that that's the main part of his game. It ain't going to change, but there comes a line or a time where he's going to have to say, okay, maybe I need to take a step back.
Yeah, too much of the Neanderthal gene. That's the problem. Matthew, what do you think about his picks dropping? And is there somebody that you're worried about falling down the boards?
Just to touch on Leroux there, I had him at 30th in my first rankings, and that was a big reason why he was going towards the second round than the first. And yeah, his decision making is questionable, and there's so many players that you get frustrated with because of that aspect of their game. And it does have a little, it still has a place in the NHL, but it's not as something that a coach would be like, well, we need this on our team. You don't want a guy in the penalty box for most of the season, putting yourself on, having to kill penalties a lot during the game. So he's got the talent, no question. And he probably will be drafted in the first round because of it. But there's definitely going to be something that has to change in his game for him to be an effective NHLer and a long-term guy on a team. So I definitely agree with him being a faller on your rankings, Peter. And, even Lambos as well. Like he's such a he's got the game to be a talent, to be that top 3 talent. That's why he was in the top 3 in a lot of rankings early on. So I think if he can, the injury, like you said, Andrew, is going to make a difference. But I think he's still going to be drafted in the first round. He's probably still going to be drafted in the top 20. But he's definitely not where a lot of people thought he was going to be drafted. And that's why he's in, where he is right now in the rankings.
Well, we give a lot of attention, and rightfully so, to the guys at the top of the list. Your number 1 picks, your top 10 picks. Those are the marquee names. But as we all know, a draft class isn't defined by who you pick first. It's made by the guys that come in later rounds. And that's where the GMs and the scouting departments really separate themselves, is finding those mid-round, late-round guys that turn out to be something in the NHL. Some of that is luck, but a lot of that isn't. You got to know what you're looking at. So with that in mind, Peter, who's a guy in your top 100 rankings that's outside of that top 32, outside of that first round, lower on your list, but a guy that you're high on, that you think is going to make one of these GMs look a lot smarter than he really is?
There's quite a bit. I mean, especially a lot of names from the USHL. I've been watching that a lot lately. Thanks to Dylan Crow over at FC Hockey. I've been keeping an eye on a lot of players there, and a lot of names like Martino, Jack Barr, Jack Pierre, Tristan Braz are a lot of names that are like gaining a lot of attention with me. But I'm a big fan of Evan Naus. I know I mentioned that last episode. I'm still loving his game, his composure, his ability to stay calm under the back end and make stretch passes as a defenseman. It's just so clean and crisp right now. I'm a huge fan of his. And probably my second ranked goalie right now, Sebastian Cossa from the Oil Kings. He has a 1.43 goals against average and a .947 save percentage, stumbling over there. Both in both categories, he's ranked 3rd, and he's and he's backs up in a really stellar team right now with the Oil Kings. And mentioned Dylan Genther at the top. He's a really good, shooter, crisp hands and tight. He's really great, and I think Cossa is, if a team's looking for a goalie, even just teetering on outside of that first round, Cossa could maybe make that jump in if a team really likes him and get that goaltending spot solidified.
All righty. Matthew, who's what are your thoughts on those guys? And is there a guy that you're liking outside that second round that's not getting as much pub as he should be?
Yeah, I like those picks. Evan Naus is the guy I had kind of an eye on too. And to mention him, he's got a lot of talents that could make him a great NHL defenseman. And that's what the NHL needs right now, is those dynamic, quick puck moving defensemen. And he's probably one of them. And for me, a guy that's come on my radar that is probably going to be someone that's going to make some noise in the NHL is Ville Koivunen in Finland. Just won Rookie of the Year out for Karpat there, and he's got a lot of skills, a lot of aspects that a lot of NHL teams would like. And the guy, just to put it in perspective, guys that have won that Rookie of the Year, Capo Caco was one of them, and he's doing pretty well in the NHL. So I think he's going to be a guy that's going to get some love from GMs, and just because of his overall skill.
All righty. And Andrew, what's your take on the beyond the first round guys?
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of go off your board here, Peter, and I'm gonna take Red Savage.
There you go.
Is that a real guy?
Yeah,
that sounds like a comedian from the 60s.
Not only one of the best names in the draft potentially, but obviously, a kid who's got NHL pedigree with his father, Brian, playing a number of years in the NHL. And, a guy who's, for me, I think is severely underrated. 34 points in 36 games this year with the U18 program. He also, he can play center, he can play wing. He's, has that potential to play multiple positions. And, for a guy at 5'11", getting close to that 180-pound mark, he's a guy that plays much bigger than he is. So He's a guy that I'd be keeping my eye on. Right now, a lot of people have him ranked late third, early fourth. I wouldn't be shocked to see him move up a little bit and get a few calls and see if teams can take him and develop him into a potential NHL player down the road.
All righty. Yeah, it's always a fun time of year because there's always a few guys that make their way up there and people, who the heck is this guy? And then they turn out to be pretty good prospects and pros. That's what it's what it's all about. But we're definitely going to have some more. That's going to wrap up this edition of our draft prospect discussions. We're definitely going to have some more of these before the draft in July and probably some more afterwards. Thank you to Peter. You can go to thehockeywriters.com and give a look at his entire top 100 list. And then you can send him messages over there on his Twitter account about how wrong he is on everything, because that's what the internet is for. It's to tell you that you're wrong.
I'm ready for it. Don't worry.
Hey, it's part of the job. And of course, thanks again to Matthew Zator and Andrew Forbes for joining us. You can follow them on Twitter as well. They got their name handles right there on the screen. Keep an eye out over at thehockeywriters.com. Both of them are going to be coming out with their next rankings soon, early April-ish. So in the next few days, couple of weeks, you can check them out. And then we're going to put them on the spot and pick apart their rankings once that comes out. So there'll be plenty of more draft, prospect, and maybe even a mock draft. I think that could be kind of fun if I could pull that off.
Definitely.
Everybody loves a good mock draft. So exciting things to come. Make sure you hit like over on the Facebook page if that's where you're watching. If you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe, and then you'll know whenever one of the great Hockey Writer shows hits the air. You won't miss a thing. Follow us all on Twitter, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and especially a big thanks to everybody who watched. We'll see you later.